WWE in 2016 was a better year than 2015 in my opinion because the young talent actually got a chance to show what they had. This year had a couple of first-time world champions, and NXT was about to blow up and make us believe the stars that went through this system were going to be big stars when they were called up to Raw and SmackDown. Undertaker only had one match in 2016 against Shane, and it was understandable. Triple H became world champion again, but it was better than who was champ at the time. The Big Show, Mark Henry, and Kane were not part of any of the main storylines, and John Cena, the main guy for the past 10 years, was dealing with some injuries, so we didn't see much of him like previous years. Coming into 2016, WWE only had 5 main titles. The New Day were tag champs, the United States champion was Del Rio, who lost it briefly to Kalisto but won it back before the Rumble, the Divas champion was Charlotte, the Intercontinental champion was Dean Ambrose, and the WWE champion was Roman Reigns. The New Day started off the show by defeating the Usos. Both of these teams can deliver, and this was an alright match to start off the pay-per-view. Kalisto was coming in hot to 2016 after that match at TLC where he hit that Salida del Sol off the ladder. Then, beating Del Rio with Cena's endorsement, Kalisto got the win against Del Rio again at the Rumble for the US title. Something that was a little odd was that Kalisto won the title on Raw on January 11th and then lost it the next episode of SmackDown back to Alberto. This feud was probably meant to be Del Rio vs Cena, however he got injured around the start of the new year, keeping him out until May of this same year. Charlotte had completed her heel turn, and along with Ric Flair by her side, she took on Becky Lynch for the Divas title. After the match, with Charlotte as the winner, Sasha Banks came out and inserted herself into the title picture, but it would still take a while before she actually got her chance for the belt. By the way, Flair kissed Lynch during this match, and wow, Flair's still a kiss-stealing son of a gun in 2016. How crazy, and might I say, Becky should have gotten the push here for letting a 60-year-old man make out with her. The Royal Rumble match this year was for the WWE Championship. Storyline reasons were because the McMahon family did not want Roman to hold the belt. Let's keep that in mind when we move forward. So, to stack the deck against them, they would have a drawing where they would have Roman be the #1 entrant. At this point, Roman had gotten over in the same city that booed him the year before, Philadelphia, when he won the WWE title back from Sheamus in 2015. But like I said in the 2015 Rewind video, they made Reigns continue to cut corny promos and the crowd turned on him quicker than 6ix9ine at a court case. So, in Orlando where the Rumble was, they once again booed the roof off the building when he came out for the Rumble. Entering number 2 was Rusev, who was part of the League of Nations, comprised of himself, Sheamus, Wade Barrett, and Alberto Del Rio. Rusev got eliminated before entrant number 3 came out. After weeks of speculation, arguably the world's best wrestler outside of the WWE at the time came out at number 3, and the roof blew off the building once again, but this time it was for a good response. Number 3 was AJ Styles, who had made a name for himself in TNA and especially recently in the popular New Japan stable, the Bullet Club. Number 6 was Chris Jericho, and we will see the seeds for the feud between him and AJ in the coming months. Other notable entrants for the first half were Curtis Axel, who was making his grand entrance into the Rumble after never being eliminated the year before, and Kofi Kingston, who now was actually gaining some real steam with the New Day gimmick, and we were waiting to see what he was going to do to stay in the Rumble this time. R-Truth came out at number 12, and he continued his My Bad character by bringing out a ladder into the ring, thinking it was a ladder match before being thrown out by Kane. Big Show, Goldust, Titus O'Neil, and Kane came out early instead of coming out at later numbers like the previous year, where they had no business entering the Royal Rumble. So far, the Rumble is in a complete mess going into the second half. Number 16 through 22 continued the momentum. Neville, who is a popular new guy, number 18 Kevin Owens, who earlier had a good match against number 19 Dean Ambrose, came out to get responses. Owens got some good heat by eliminating AJ Styles before being eliminated himself by a returning Sami Zayn at number 20. Number 23 was Brock Lesnar, who came in and cleaned house, eliminating the 3 members of the Wyatt family, not including Bray. Somewhere in the middle of all this, Roman got taken out by the League of Nations and taken to the back. At the time, the talk on the internet was so that Roman could rest because he could not stay the whole Rumble match, and that the company was trying to protect him. Looking back on that excuse, it's ridiculous even as a Roman hater. They put him through tables and Reigns took a beating, so them carrying him to the back was called for. Bray Wyatt came out at number 27 and had his family take out the Beast, potentially to set up a match down the line with him and Lesnar. Now we know, according to Jon Moxley I believe, Wyatt was supposed to take on Lesnar at WrestleMania before it was changed to Ambrose vs Lesnar, but at the time the Wyatt family eliminating Lesnar set up an interesting matchup. As we come to an end, Ziggler and Sheamus were 28 and 29, Reigns returned before number 30 came out and attacked Sheamus on the ramp and threw Del Rio out, getting some payback on the League of Nations. Then number 30 was the returning Triple H to a huge ovation. The last time we had seen him was when Roman beat him down at the TLC pay-per-view in December. The final four came down to Sheamus, Reigns, Ambrose, and Triple H. Sheamus got taken out by Reigns. Triple H eliminated Reigns to fan surprise to set up an Ambrose versus Triple H as the final two. While the fans were going to be fine with either of them winning, having Ambrose win here would have probably sent the roof flying off for the third time in one night. But at the end, Triple H wins the match and wins the WWE title for the 14th time, and the first time since 2009. Again, I've complained about them giving old guys the spotlight over the new talent, but if we only have a choice of Triple H and Roman Reigns as WWE champ, I'm picking Hunter, Hearst, Helmsley, McMahon every day of the week, twice on Sunday. Unlike 2015, 2016 has kicked off with a good winner to the Royal Rumble. Moving on to the next month, Kalisto continued to feud with Del Rio, but both of these guys' momentum had fallen from where it was. Sasha Banks had separated herself from her stable Team Bad and teamed up with Becky to face Naomi and Tamina at Fastlane. Tamina being repackaged for like the 5th time in 6 years. The stables from August of 2015 were all but gone after this pay-per-view. Kevin Owens had won the Intercontinental title back from Dean Ambrose in between the Rumble and Fastlane, so that maybe fans believed he could win the 3-way match later in the night. During this time, I remember Ziggler and Owens facing each other like 3 times in 5 weeks, not including Fastlane, and I had no idea why. Maybe the start of them throwing away good matches on TV multiple times, and then again giving it to us on pay-per-view. The Wyatt family was in a 6-man tag versus Kane, Big Show, and Ryback. Remember when I said Kane and Big Show weren't the main stars? Well, just give it a couple more weeks. Besides them building up a heel turn for Ryback, I don't know why they would beat the Wyatt family in a random 6-person tag. Bray wasn't even in the match, but still, at the time they were building him for Brock, so it didn't make sense why his team lost. Also, why wasn't he involved in the 3-way match later in the night, either in the match or just as a run-in to attack Lesnar? Obviously, the next night we will find out it was not going to be Wyatt versus Lesnar at Mania, but the Wyatt character has so much potential to defeat him or his stable would derail Bray every time. Bray would take 3 steps forward into building his matches, and then WWE would find a way to set him back 5 steps. We wouldn't really see another Wyatt appearance for a while, because Bray and other members of the family would deal with injuries. They had a brief appearance at Mania where The Rock would beat Eric Rowan in 6 seconds. The Rock also made an appearance on Raw, and the New Day came out to interrupt him, which was one of the best segments on Raw this year. Speaking of the New Day, they were coming into Fastlane as heels, but after being on the Edge and Christian cutting peep show of edges, they were 90% babyfaces. They called out the League of Nations to set up a Mania non-title 6-man tag match. The New Day would have a great title match against Y2 AJ in the build-up on Raw, but when the League of Nations lost a shot at the titles, they would attack the New Day after the match, and the babyface turn was 100% complete. The New Day went on to lose to the League of Nations at WrestleMania. The end of the match gave us a good moment though when Mick Foley, Shawn Michaels, and Stone Cold came out and attacked the League of Booties. And after trying to get Stone Cold to dance, Xavier Woods even got his own stunner. The night after, the Nation of Abomination cut Wade Barrett out, but it was really the end of the entire stable as a whole. AJ Styles and Chris Jericho had their rubber match at Fastlane. They once again had a good match, and Styles was made to look good. Being an indie talent, fans were worried AJ Styles would be made to look bad or lose a bunch before getting a real push based on all the outside talent that had come into the company in previous years. Jericho came back again in early January to be part of the Rumble. He stayed working with Styles all the way through WrestleMania. The feud was not really anything great, but as long as AJ won, the fans wouldn't care. Chris Jericho still got the win at Mania, so fans still weren't sure how AJ was going to be used moving forward. Brie Bella got the Divas title shot against Charlotte at Fastlane. You might be wondering why if Sasha had returned to take on Charlotte at the Rumble. Well, Daniel Bryan announced his retirement early in February, and if you know anything about WWE, nepotism is a real thing. So of course, Daniel Bryan's wife would get a title shot out of nowhere. It was fitting though, as one of the most diva wrestlers ever was in the last real Divas pay-per-view title match. Charlotte was able to beat Brie Bella after terrible promos between both of them to build their feuds, I might say. This led to a 3-way match for the returning Women's Championship at WrestleMania between Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks. It was in my opinion the best match on the card, and if Sasha would have won after being the fan favorite going into the match, it could have made it that much better. Curtis Axel was part of a random stable with Heath Slater, Bo Dallas, and Adam Rose. The way the stable broke up was in this year's draft later in the year. Adam Rose was released. Heath Slater went on to get over for a while after fighting for a contract and winning the tag titles with Rhino. Bo and Axel were barely used for the rest of the year. R-Truth and Goldust were teasing a tag team. Okay, so I'll take this team out of any future retrospective videos because of how poorly booked this was. They teased them teaming up in horrible comedy skits for about 6 months. Then when they finally got together, they were nothing but a jobber team who never got wins and barely got any TV time. The breakup would come the next year that also resulted in nothing. Goldust would have a glimpse of his former self when he turned on Truth, but it never amounted to anything. And then when researching for a pay-per-view match between them, I couldn't find anything. So that was a bunch of wasted time whenever they were on TV. After the Rumble, Brock Lesnar was pissed that he got eliminated by the Wyatt family. Roman wanted his title rematch, and Dean Ambrose was the popular guy WWE wanted us to believe in, but at the end of the day was never going to be given the chance to win the title. So this set up a three-way match between them to see who would face Triple H at WrestleMania for the WWE Championship. It made no sense, however, that the McMahons hated Reigns, but they gave him a shot to earn a shot to fight for the main belt in the main event of WrestleMania. Long story short, Reigns pinned Ambrose for the win. So for the second year in a row, the main event of WrestleMania had a guy the majority of fans were not behind, and again he was supposed to be the good guy, this time taking on the evil authority figure. Alright, so where do we start on this road of randomness? There were so many injuries that had taken out some top performers for this year's Mania, and most matches were built in less than 2 months. The main card of WrestleMania started off with a 7-man ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. Stardust, also known as Cody Rhodes, was about to compete in his final WrestleMania, at least as of 2019. Sin Cara, a man who was part of a promising tag team but for some reason it was split apart. Kalisto, by the way, defended his US title against Ryback on the pre-show, and then he would defend it on the pre-show again at the next pay-per-view. That would be the last we would see of Ryback, as he would be released after Payback. To be honest, his matches against Kalisto were my favorite Ryback matches ever. Don't ask me why I was watching a Ryback pre-show match. The Miz and Dolph Ziggler were also part of this match. Dolph Ziggler would go on to feud the next couple of months with Baron Corbin, the new NXT call-up that won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal at WrestleMania 32. It led up to nothing, so let's see. Another NXT call-up with no direction after his first program on the main roster. Zack Ryder would win the title here after tossing The Miz off the ladder at the end. A great moment for Zack, but it would be short-lived as he would lose the title the next night to The Miz, and we would see the return of Maurice, Miz's wife. Not bad on the eyes, so hey, I'm not complaining. I feel like Zack Ryder is one of the few who should take advantage of the indies to see if his stock could rise, because WWE will probably never make him the star I think he had and probably still has a chance to become. Ryder wouldn't do much the rest of the year but tag with his partner from NXT, Mojo Rawley. Ryder would get injured to end the year, so not much going on from the Hype Bros in 2016. Kevin Owens was the IC champ going into WrestleMania, continued his feud with Sami Zayn into Mania, and after having some great matches, the feud actually got some build up throughout the months and their history was explained. In today's WWE, that seems like an odd concept. The match at Battleground was better than the first match at Payback, but both are in the top matches of the year. One of the most disappointing matches, however, was Brock Lesnar vs Dean Ambrose at WrestleMania 32. Lesnar was not yet hated for his part-time status because whenever he would show up, he would still get the biggest reaction from the crowd. But after seeing the way this match was laid out, it was obvious something was not right. Lesnar can have a great match when he wants to, and Ambrose is a crazy son of a bitch when it comes to spots in the ring, so when there weren't many crazy bumps in a street fight at WrestleMania, everyone watching was left wanting more. This would be the last time we'd see Lesnar until SummerSlam, when he would take on the returning Randy Orton. The match had no real build up and instead was just built around their star power. Don't get me wrong, a Lesnar vs Orton match is good enough to sell itself, but if the match is just an exhibition match, it needs a conclusion. Especially since we know they wouldn't follow up on the ending for a while since they were on opposite brands. The ending of the match saw Brock Lesnar take his gloves off and bust Orton open the hard way. This led to Shane McMahon to come out and get F5, and again they would fail to follow that up with any conclusion as well. Stephanie McMahon would just say Brock Lesnar will be fined $500 or something. We wouldn't see Brock Lesnar in a match again until Survivor Series to face off against the returning Goldberg. For some reason they would announce his return instead of making it a surprise. Forget the ratings, because if you have unexpected surprises on the show, every show will get good ratings because you don't know what can happen at any time. Goldberg would pin Lesnar clean for the first time since Brock Lesnar had broken Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania in 2014, showing you that no matter how many new guys were getting the belts, the old talent were the real main event. Oh yeah, Shane McMahon, by the way, made his huge return back in February of of 2016 to try and take control of Raw per the storyline from Vince. So Vince, of course, would call on The Undertaker to take on Shane at WrestleMania in a Hell in a Cell match. They made perfect sense, right? This was rumored to be because of the many injuries at the time. Sting and John Cena were supposedly rumored to take on The Undertaker at WrestleMania, as I remember. The bill was alright. Undertaker just being alright to do Vince's dirty work was never explained. There was a lockbox that was mentioned but was never really followed on either. Their match at WrestleMania came, and in my opinion, it was good. I can see this match being too long and how it made no sense that Shane McMahon would be able to go up against a legend like The Undertaker, but Shane is booked as a guy who would do anything and has resilience. Nobody ever says they hated his matches against Test, Big Show, or Kurt Angle when he would hold his own. But now, because we all need to feel some type of way about everything, this time it made no sense. Anyways, Shane would fail to win and did not gain control of Raw, and Undertaker would go into hiding until the 900th episode of SmackDown for whatever reason. The end of Shane was supposed to be the next night, but nope. They didn't want to hand Undertaker a loss at WrestleMania, but they still wanted Shane to be a personality on TV, so they would undo everything from WrestleMania, and Shane would still run Raw from April through July when the brand split took place and he became commissioner for SmackDown. The main event for WrestleMania 32 was Triple H as the WWE Champion defending against Roman Reigns. I have to say, they had many chances to change this to where the match would not be booed from start to finish, but who am I? I'm just a random person playing fantasy booker on the internet. So, they got what they wanted, Roman as the champion closing the biggest show of the year. The only problem was that the fans were not on board with Roman Reigns as a good guy character as the main champion. The next night, even when they would say on commentary that the crowd after WrestleMania was so crazy that they would cheer those they normally boo and boo those they normally cheer. This was without question to try and convince the casual and new fans, if any, that Roman Reigns was not what the crowd thought of him. It's one thing to push a character that fans do not want to see, but it's another to try to lie to your audience into believing something that is not accurate. So of course, that would add more fuel to the fire in fans hating Roman because of the way WWE booked and presented him. This WrestleMania could not be saved by a cash-in, and with a lot of the fan favorites losing their matches at Mania like Styles, Sasha, Dean Ambrose, and The New Day, this WrestleMania got mostly negative feedback. Let's see if they can make things better in the coming months. Moving on to the spring and early summer months, which is usually where the WWE takes some weird paths. We've seen Dude Love, 123 Kid, Chris Benoit, and Brock Lesnar as rookies. Rob Van Dam, CM Punk, and The Nexus get big spots during this time and years before. This time that spot was given to AJ Styles. The night after WrestleMania, we were treated to a fatal 4-way that would determine the new contender for the WWE Championship. Chris Jericho, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Styles. Owens would take out Sami early in the night, and the man that would take his spot was a returning Cesaro, who came back repackaged as a James Bond type character, which was a nice change for him. Styles would get his win back against Jericho by pinning him to win the match and be the one to face Roman for the WWE title at Payback. During this time, some other members of Japan's Bullet Club would join WWE as well and attack the Usos, who are Roman Reigns' cousins. Not sure if that's legit, but let's go with it. I'm talking about Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. The match between Styles and Reigns would be interrupted by the Usos and Gallows and Anderson, but Roman still got the win. At the next pay-per-view, Extreme Rules, the Usos and Gallows and Anderson would face off in a tornado tag match, and Styles would get a rematch for the WWE title in an Extreme Rules match. The Usos would lose to get the new tag team over, but Roman kept the belt over AJ, which set up a return for another injured superstar, Seth freaking Rollins. Styles would then turn on another returning superstar on the Memorial Day episode of Raw, and that man was John Cena. The club was officially formed, and we would see Styles and Cena have a series of matches leading up to SummerSlam. At Money in the Bank, Styles got a win over Cena with the help of the club. At Battleground, John Cena, Enzo Amore, and Cass would defeat the club. At SummerSlam, we would get AJ Styles versus John Cena again, and this turned out to be a great match to end their summer feud with the right guy going over. AJ Styles would win, and as the new guy, you need to give him a big win over a big name to push him as a top contender. They did separate the club during the draft, and it hurt Gallows and Anderson in the long run. AJ Styles, however, would flourish being alone on SmackDown, and we will get into that a little bit later. I mentioned Enzo and Cass earlier, so let's talk about the tag situation after WrestleMania. Even though the New Day lost at Mania, the belts were not defended, so they moved on as champs. NXT call-ups, Enzo and Cass would take on another call-up team, the Vaudevillains, Aiden English and Simon Gotch. Enzo will be knocked out, whether scripted or not. allowing the Vaudevillains to become contenders for the tag titles. The New Day were in the middle of the longest tag team title reign in history, but at the time nobody was really talking about it. The New Day kept the tag belts against the Vaudevillains at Extreme Rules, defended successfully in a 4-way tag match at Money in the Bank. They didn't even defend them at the Battleground pay-per-view and got a DQ finish against Gallows and Anderson at SummerSlam. Chris Jericho would move on to feud with Dean Ambrose. While the build to their 2 pay-per-view matches weren't great, we had some fun times thrown in there. Mitch the Plant dying and Jericho light-up jacket being destroyed coming to mind as the best parts. Ambrose got both wins at the pay-per-view. At Extreme Rules, we also saw the first and only Asylum match. The match went on a little too long, but Jericho being sent into a pile of tacks at the end and all the rest of the weapon spots made for a decent all-around match. Charlotte feuded with Natalya for the women's title. Not much to say about this one. Both of these women cannot cut promos. Charlotte has gotten better, but at the time she still had terrible mic presence, and Natalya is super corny. They tried recreating the screwjob finish once again to prolong the feud into a submission match at Extreme Rules. Dana Brooke from NXT would align herself with Charlotte and would tag up with her at Money in the Bank against Becky Lynch and Natalya. Then again at Battleground versus Sasha Banks and a surprise partner, Bayley, who was yet to be called up, so it was just a special appearance. Sasha Banks would move on to face Charlotte after the draft for the women's title, and after months of giving us nothing fans can enjoy in the women's title picture, Sasha would take the belt from Charlotte. That will not last long, as she would lose it to SummerSlam back to Charlotte, and defended it against the likes of Cesaro, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Darren Young, and Apollo Crews throughout the summer. He didn't really have a rivalry against any of them, which makes no sense for the secondary belt in the company. Guys like Cesaro or Zayn could have used the belt to look like bigger deals during this time. A guy who did use the belt to seem like a bigger deal was Rusev, when he beat Kalisto for the US title at Extreme Rules. It ended that whack run of Kalisto when it gave Rusev something to do. Rusev treats the US title like the World Championship, and along with Lana, who was dressing super hot at the time, if you want to give me Rusev as US champ and on TV most of the time, I won't complain. Seth Rollins returned at Extreme Rules, like I mentioned, after the injury from November the previous year. He would take on Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank and would end up winning the belt back. Earlier in the night, however, Dean Ambrose won the Money in the Bank ladder match and cashed in after Rollins won the belt, resulting in Dean Ambrose winning the big one to become the WWE champion for the first time. All 3 members of the Shield were WWE champion in one night, if that means anything. Roman Reigns would be suspended for smacking an old lady and giving her the finger on his visit to a local church. I'm just kidding, it was probably for smoking meth or something. We might never know. Yet, he would be back in time for the next pay-per-view. What a coincidence, isn't it? And at that pay-per-view, it will be a triple threat between Reigns, Rollins, and Ambrose for the WWE Championship. You would think absence makes the heart grow fonder towards Roman, but nope, he would get booed like always. And I checked, this was not the crowd from the Raw after WrestleMania, so the response from Reigns was accurate. Dean Ambrose will retain and take the WWE Championship to SmackDown after the draft, leaving Raw without a world champion. WWE would announce they would be splitting up the roster again. Stephanie and Mick Foley would run Raw, and Shane with Daniel Bryan would run SmackDown. SmackDown would get WWE Champion Dean Ambrose and Intercontinental Champion The Miz over in the draft, and they would introduce SmackDown Tag Titles and SmackDown Women's Championship in the following months after SummerSlam, while Raw kept the Raw Women's Championship with Charlotte at the time of the draft, later being Sasha Banks, the United States title with Rusev, and what would become the Raw Tag Team titles with the New Day. The Cruiserweight division was also given to Raw since they have 3 hours, but they never gave that division the time of day to develop properly before taking it off Raw completely, so this is the last time I'll really mention it on this video. So, they just needed to crown a world champion. The tag division on Raw was steady because the New Day were on the verge of breaking the longest tag title reign in history. The SmackDown tag division looked promising, but in traditional WWE fashion, they didn't highlight the real tag teams like they should. Instead, the first SmackDown tag champs were a put-together team of Rhino and Heath Slater. Don't get me wrong, Slater's run towards the title was entertaining, but what came out of it afterwards for anybody? They would eventually lose the titles to another non-tag team in Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton. Orton and Bray Wyatt were involved in a feud that resulted in Orton eventually joining the Wyatt family. This time it would just be Bray, Harper, and Orton. I remember a lot of hate for the wacky illusions that happened to Orton because of Wyatt's mind games. However, it's a TV show. If you ever liked any dark powers or teleportation spots from The Undertaker or Kane, you have no right to hate what they had Wyatt and Orton do. Like I said earlier, they won the tag titles from Slater and Rhino at TLC, but then lost them before the year ended to American Alpha. Big deal for Chad Gable and Jason Jordan to be the team of Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton. Speaking of the Wyatt family, Braun Strowman was separated due to the draft and started building a good character by himself. He would destroy jobbers week in and week out, asking Foley for better competition. Sami Zayn stood up and took on the challenge and gave Braun Strowman a fight. Foley was an unnecessary piece to this feud, however, because while he would say he didn't want Zayn to face Strowman because it was a big risk, he had no problem making matches with any other WWE superstar or local jobber to face Braun. If he really thought Strowman was not safe, why not just fire him? Stupid little detail that they overlooked, but I thought it was interesting to point out. Cesaro and Sheamus were drafted to Raw, and at SummerSlam they started a best of 7 series where the winner would get a future title shot. The series went to the 7th match at Clash of Champions, which resulted in a tie. So General Manager Mick Foley forced them into a tag team, and they would have multiple shots at the New Day and would not get the job done until after the New Day broke the record, which was at the Roadblock December pay-per-view. So instead of pushing the real teams like the Club, which are Gallows and Anderson, I know they never went by that name after splitting up from Styles, but it's shorter than saying their full names. Teams like them, or Enzo and Cass, the Hype Bros, Vaudevillains, or even Breezango, they chose to establish random teams to be the champions. Staying over on the Raw side, they needed to crown a new world champion, and they did so when they announced the Universal Championship. While the belt was just a red version of the WWE title and it did not have a good first impression, the match to crown the first ever Universal Champion was a dream match. Seth Rollins, still a heel, would face the debuting Finn Balor at SummerSlam, who was the longest reigning NXT champion before being called up. Throw in that Finn Balor was coming out as the Demon, this match was set up to succeed. They once again showed that they can push new talent by having Finn Balor pick up the win to become champion. It was short-lived as Balor suffered an injury and was forced to vacate the title the night after on Monday Night Raw, setting up a fatal 4-way to crown the second ever champion. Big Cass for some reason was in that match, along with Reigns, Seth Rollins, and the eventual winner Kevin Owens. With a little help from Triple H, who came out and pedigreed his former protege Seth Rollins, it allowed Kevin Owens to get the pin. Kevin Owens would form an allegiance with Chris Jericho, and both in and out of the ring, Jericho and Owens would create some of the most entertaining moments in recent memory. Like I said earlier, Sasha Banks lost her title to Charlotte at SummerSlam. The night after, Bayley finally made her debut on the main roster. She was one of the top superstars in NXT that helped put that brand on the map. At Clash of Champions, she would be in a triple threat match for the women's title. Charlotte would retain and Bayley would go into obscurity while Sasha and Charlotte feuded for the belt for the rest of the year and had some classic women's matches. The title switched hands maybe once too many times for each of them, but at least it wasn't Natalya and Nikki Bella. You feel me? Bayley had a meaningless feud with Dana Brooke for a while. Nia Jax had also made her debut from NXT after the draft, but wasn't doing much but fighting local talent. Over on the SmackDown side, Becky Lynch was the first SmackDown Women's Champion, and along with Alexa Bliss, who would beat Becky for the title at TLC in a tables match, they would be the cornerstones for the future of the women's division. Becky Lynch was a fan favorite, one of those people you can't help but get behind even if her character was a little corny and goofy at the time. Alexa Bliss from NXT stood out more than anyone thought she would. Her promos were good despite terrible scripting at times. Remember the line where she said, "I'll get you, my pretty," in a Wicked Witch's voice? Yeah, I try to forget that stuff too. She's decent in the ring as well, but when you can entertain on the mic, your feuds will sell themselves. Carmella also got called up from NXT after the draft to SmackDown. She would feud with Nikki Bella after Survivor Series and into 2017. Carmella was also able to show that she could stand alone without her former stable of Enzo and Cass from NXT. While her feud with Nikki was still something you would see in the Divas era, like Carmella once said in a promo in 2018, she's a diva and she's damn proud of it. Hey, if we can have Lashley and EC3 showing off their body, pause, we can still have some good looking women fighting over some petty things, can't we? Rusev as the US champion came out of SummerSlam looking like a fool, showing us that there was really no repercussions for Roman after the suspension. Even Randy Orton was taken out of the main events for a good while when he got suspended. But nope, how do we punish Roman? Let's give him the secondary title against Rusev and have him kick out more than ever. Listen, kicking out of crazy moves isn't a bad thing. It's when you do it so often with one guy with moves that will take out 90% of the rest of the roster that makes it head scratching. So anyways, Roman won the US title, and to add insult to injury, he would toss it over his shoulder, showing everyone he cared nothing for it. He never did that with the WWE title. You know what? As I'm sitting here remembering that now, Vince probably told him to do that so he could look cool. Then, to punish him even further for being suspended, he would be inserted into the Universal title picture with Kevin Owens. At Hell in a Cell, Roman retained his belt in the cell against Rusev, and Kevin retained against Rollins with the help of Jericho. By the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but Sasha and Charlotte also had one of their many matches inside Hell in a Cell, and if it wasn't for an odd ending, it probably would have been one of the greater Hell in a Cell matches in recent years. So even though Roman already had a belt and Owens could have faced anyone else on the main roster, Roman would go after the Universal title throughout the next couple of months after Survivor Series. Seeing as Survivor Series was all about Raw vs SmackDown, none of the main titles but the IC title were defended. Reigns would not win the Universal title, but it wasn't ever because Kevin Owens beat him. There was always shenanigans going on whenever Kevin Owens retained the belt. And whenever the belt wasn't on the lines, Reigns would beat Kevin. Makes no sense. At that point, just give the Universal title to Roman and let Kevin do his own thing with Jericho, or give him the US belt and have him face some other guys in the mid-card. But I don't understand why they would be facing each other when they both had straps and a roster the size that they have. Moving on, Dolph Ziggler was in one of his biggest slumps of his career. He was doing nothing, and whenever his music hit, fans were not making as much noise as they once did. In comes The Miz, who is now at the height of his popularity. Never before did anyone care what he was doing, not even when he main evented WrestleMania against John Cena. Now he's getting good heel heat from the crowd, and he's the Intercontinental Champion. Dolph Ziggler and The Miz would face each other for the rest of the year basically. At Backlash, Miz would retain the title, setting up a retirement match for Dolph Ziggler if he didn't win the belt. He of course ends up pulling it off and wins the Intercontinental Championship to a great response. Right before Survivor Series, however, The Miz would get the title back, so then we will go into TLC pay-per-view for the blow-off match, as we like to call it in the business. Nah, just playing, but it was Ziggler vs Miz in a ladder match. Great match, and at the end, The Miz retained. I don't know what it is about Dolph, but they never seem to give him anything, despite him having a good following. Not even giving him the mid-card belt for a couple of months. Let's rewind a couple months to talk about what happened with the WWE title during the end of 2016. Dean Ambrose defended his WWE title against Dolph Ziggler at SummerSlam, and this will be the first time I can remember the crowd being dead because of how long a show was. WrestleMania 32 was the first over 5 hours Mania, but that's the biggest show of the year. A 13-match SummerSlam card can never hold up the whole way through, especially when you have multiple tag team matches that mean nothing. Miz vs Apollo and Reigns vs Rusev. So Ziggler vs Ambrose did not live up to the hype. Ambrose retained, but it would be the final successful world title defense he would have, as he would lose the WWE title to AJ Styles at Backlash. So look at that, ladies and gentlemen. 3 for 3 or 4 for 4 if you include Dean Ambrose in 2016 for giving new people a chance with the world title. Along with Balor and Owens, AJ would win his first ever world championship. AJ Styles had a good heel run with Cena over the summer and continued that into the fall with his feud against Dean Ambrose. At the time, the roster was really thin of top babyfaces, so them keeping the belt on Styles the rest of the year was fine by me. Their pay-per-view triple threat match, including John Cena at No Mercy, was good, and their TLC match at the December pay-per-view was great as well. The only thing that I would change was not to have Ambrose and Styles face off as many times as they did. While their pay-per-view matches were good, I don't see the need for why they fought so much on SmackDown. Throw in the nonsense with James Ellsworth. The times AJ, Ellsworth, and Ambrose were in the ring on SmackDown got old really quick. So, to end the year off, our tag champions are Cesaro and Sheamus, and American Alpha. Our women's champs are Alexa Bliss and Charlotte. The mid-card champs were Roman and The Miz. And our world champions were Kevin Owens and AJ Styles. So 2016 saw a ton of new talent because of the WWE draft. Owens, Rollins, Charlotte, and Sasha Banks would lead the Raw side, while Becky Lynch, Dean Ambrose, AJ Styles, and Alexa Bliss led the SmackDown side. Those 8 stars were made to look great in 2016. Sami Zayn, Rusev, Gallows, Anderson, Enzo, and Cass could have been booked better in the second half of the year, while The Miz, Heath Slater, Chris Jericho, and Dolph Ziggler had good moments to add to their careers. And looking to the future, 2017 looked to be a promising year for Bayley, Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt, Carmella, and American Alpha. Many new stars were being developed in 2016, and as a wrestling show, the least you can give us is character development. And pushing young and new talent is a great way of giving that to us. 2015 was a time to showcase the veterans for some reason, but 2016 brought us a new generation. How they have followed through on the work from 2016 is another story, but this year by itself has some good moments and matches, along with fresh new talent and consistent storylines. Alright, so that was my rundown of the year of 2016 in WWE. And since you are seeing this one, that means you're going to be seeing a 2017 one, a 2018 one, and a 2019 one. If you want to see any other years, please let me know in the comments. Like I said in my 2015 one, I have only been watching full time since 2008. I took a break in 2013, 2014. And like I said as well, I can comment on 2008 through now, but any previous years to that, I don't really know what the feeling was in the wrestling community on how certain feuds and storylines were viewed at the time. So I'm not really going to be able to comment on that stuff, but I can run it down just talking about how characters developed and how the storylines went from the start of the year to the end. So I can do that for like any year previous to 2008. I can do my research instead of just talking about how people felt at the time. But this was 2016, and like I said in the video, when researching this stuff, 2016 and 2015 even, I would take those years in a heartbeat over what we are getting today.